Superman, the latest iteration of the iconic DC character, this time brought to screen by Guardians of the Galaxy's James Gunn. And honestly, I had a pretty darn good time. Yeah, the movie's pretty stuffed, it gets messy at times, but I love the way they've brought Superman to life, and it's hard not to feel uplifted with his continued desire to see the best in people until absolutely proven otherwise. Because when I think Superman, I think vibrance, I think hope, and a near delusional belief in humanity that so often feels like the thing that sets him the most apart from humans because of how cynical we all end up being. This is a Superman that not only wants to save people, but genuinely wants to give everyone a chance to be the most they can be. Prioritizing the people, saving lives, mitigating damage, and not just 100% focusing on whatever beat 'em up he's currently in. That is what I want from a Superman, and that's what I feel really shines here. I really love the character and how Corenswet played it here, and that is not to send any shade to Henry Cavill. I think he was really great at the job. I just wasn't huge in the world he so often was placed in. There are people that have been bad Supermans, and I would never put Henry Cavill on that list. Now, I'll be clear, I am a huge fan of James Gunn. I love Guardians of the Galaxy. I think Peacemaker is such a damn fun show. His Suicide Squad movie was a great time. Who amongst us doesn't appreciate the classic of Scooby-Doo? So I'm coming into this acknowledging to you that I am already a fan of his work, the way he makes movies, so feel free to take that into consideration. But I just can't help but feel like so many elements of the story and the character were handled incredibly well. Like, you don't have to tell me that they heavily consulted All-Star Superman. I can see that they did that. Like, so much of this movie feels like a comic book in the best ways, the ways I really want Superman to feel while also keeping itself grounded in enough areas that it doesn't just come across feeling completely goofy. Like, yeah, it is a lot more silly than the last round of Superman we got, so if that is not to your taste, that's totally fine. It's like the inverse of what I want to see in Batman. Batman, yeah, sure, give me the brooding, give me the dark. Superman, I want the vibrance and the hope. I think it's shot super well, though there are a lot of scenes where it's like very clear that it's like, there's gonna be a 3D version of this, and other people, that's coming right at their face. To a degree I haven't seen in years, so it definitely seems like they put a lot of intentional thought into it, which is nice for the people who enjoy 3D movies. I'm not one of those people. I really like the score and the music that's outside it, which is no surprise because James Gunn that's kind of his thing in these movies. Obviously not as many drops and needle drops as you'd get in Guardians, but shout out to that time he made me a playlist when he was supposed to be working on Guardians 3. I think this movie is addressing a lot of interesting ideas when it comes to ideas of like duty, responsibility, and humanity as a whole, family and legacy, and what ends up imparted on you by the people who made you and raised you. So I do think there's some elements that they could have gone a little bit harder on, but they kind of like introduce some stuff and then focus in on one area to dissect. But still a lot of interesting stuff. I really like the surrounding cast, even though it can feel a little bit messy at times. As much as I appreciate Amy Adams as an actor, I never really liked her Lois very much, and Rachel Brosnahan is much more in line with what I imagine for the character, not just in appearance, but also vibes and how the character's written. It really is currently a toss-up right now between her and Erica Durance, but I'll have to rewatch Smallville to double-check that, but Rachel is honestly perfect, and you really do feel the chemistry between her and David. Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner is also just a blast, and I loved Mr. Terrific way more than I expected to. I know everybody's making fun of Guy's hair. Don't worry, it is a butt of the joke in the movie too. Wendell Pierce is a fantastic Perry White, and I've been a fan of Skylar Gisondo since Booksmart, and I thought he was a great Jimmy Olsen. They have him set up as this unlikely chick magnet, and I think that's so fun. Ma and Pa Kent were delightful, which is a welcome change after how Jonathan Kent was handled previously. I would have liked to see a little bit more of them in this movie, maybe, but they're used well and effectively, and I'm a fan. I also really like how they portray the differences between Clark and Superman, like the voice shifts and the underbite.
Are you being serious right now?
Sure.
Superman.
Miss Lane.
And of course, Nicholas Hoult is doing a great job as Lex Luthor, even though I'd typically peg someone a bit older for the role. He's just so despisable, and they've given him really clear motives on his hatred of Superman and how it all ties into his ego. He's an insecure worm who just has enough money to try to hide it. They really just work together as that yin and yang, which I find essential to the best villains. And they aren't afraid to let him be silly and cartoony in how menacing he is, while also showing that he can just easily navigate the political world with his wealth, as he can create these outlandish things like pocket dimensions to conceal his crimes. But not as cartoony as the way Clark conceals his secrets, because this movie adopts the lore that Clark has identity warping hypno glasses, so he literally looks like a different person with them on. But hey, I'm guessing you don't have identity warping glasses, so you might need today's sponsor, Incogni. Every time you put your personal information online, whether it's to buy something, sign up for a newsletter, you run the risk of having that information bought and sold by data brokers to people who could literally ruin your life. Your email, phone number, address, family member information, and more could just be out there for anyone to exploit. And these people can accumulate enough information to specifically target you for scams you're most likely to fall victim to. Especially in the US, where people searching sites are popping up constantly to create detailed personal profiles for anyone to search and give them the right kind of information to exploit your loved ones before anyone even knows something's happening. If you're lucky, all they'll do with the information they get is just spam you in ways that it's kind of easy to predict that it's a scam. But in worst case situations, they can do things like spoof your phone numbers so grandma thinks you're the one calling, or even start using your identity to take out loans. Things are just getting kind of scary out there, especially when you start adding AI into the mix. Incogni can help put a stop to this by scanning the web for places that have your information and send requests on your behalf to have them removed. And because they pop up so rapidly now, if you do happen to notice your information somewhere, you can send a custom request to Incogni to have it removed, and they'll take care of that back and forth. But usually once I notice that I'm getting an uptick of scam calls, I check my Incogni dashboard and they're already working on a fresh round of removal requests. And it can be that easy for you too. Just make an account, give Incogni the okay to act on your behalf, and they'll keep you updated as they're handling that back and forth stress-free. So check out incogni.com/Amanda or use code Amanda at the link below to get 60% off an annual plan and let Incogni take care of the headaches of data removal. Now before we dive into the spoilers, what is the basic plot of this movie? Well, it decides to forego showing us his origin or upbringing and kind of starts similar to 28 years later with a quick rundown on the son of Krypton being sent to Earth 30 years ago, building up to what's happening in the immediate present. And I guess I'll just give the rundown for the people who might somehow not be familiar with Superman. He's an alien named Kal-El sent to Earth when his home planet of Krypton was exploding, lands in Smallville, Kansas, gets raised as Clark by the Kents, grows up to be a journalist at the Daily Planet, and eventually adopts the moniker of Superman in his spare time to save the people of Earth. And his powers come from our sun specifically, and the substance that can take him out, make him very sick, potentially even kill him, is called kryptonite. But the important thing to note in this intro is that Clark and Superman have both been established for a solid chunk of time. But things are about to heat up for him because he prevented a war from starting, which is being presented as a US asset unilaterally involving itself in a foreign conflict. Something very concerning to the US government because they want to be in control of how they interact with foreign conflicts. It's similar to something we've seen Marvel address in Civil War, but this has the added fear of a singular god with no oversight and how much power he could take and exert over the world, which Lex Luthor is obviously looking to exploit. But ultimately, so much of this movie ends up being about what makes us human, the good we can do, and what makes us who we are, the legacy that Superman might be responsible for, and what happens when a core piece of that identity gets shattered. So yeah, overall, easy recommend if you're even remotely interested in this one, but now let's dive into those spoilers. So again, noted, we're going into spoilers. I feel bad in my Bring Her Back video, I spoiled Talk to Me, because sometimes I think when people are watching my videos, you've seen every other video I've made, so you would already know about Talk to Me. So sorry to that, guys, still worth the watch. So this movie actually starts with that extended scene that they released months ago, but now with the message that for the first time ever, Superman, the most powerful metahuman that the Earth's ever seen since they hit the public eye 3 centuries ago, has lost a battle. He's having his ass handed to him by someone who calls themselves the Hammer of Baravia, the country that Superman just prevented from starting a war, who they very quickly revealed to just be a metahuman that Lex has created and has full control over to raise government concern over Superman and the danger he presents to the world. If he's just gonna start going to other countries and messing with their politics, they're gonna come here and attack us, all to essentially get government approval to kill him. That rascal. Though I must mention that Lex is offering up his own metahuman and super soldier team for government use, which is clearly just another way to take more power for himself. The exact thing he's fear-mongering with Superman, but just a real great blend of classic comic shenanigans with fairly serious moral questions. I'm on board. Now, as we saw in that extended trailer before going back to the fight, Krypto drags Superman back to his Fortress of Solitude, healed by his robots that they pulled from All-Star Superman, which I really appreciate because that was the comic that made me really appreciate Superman as a character for the first time. They make up such a small part of this movie, but they have so much heart, and they help establish one of Superman's other motivations in this movie: his origins and what he feels his legacy on Earth means for honoring his destroyed home planet. All because of a message that was sent with him down to Earth by his parents, essentially saying that they chose Earth for him because they felt it was where he could do the most good and live out Krypton's truth. Sadly, the second half of the message is corrupted, but it's so clear that so much of that has encouraged him to be Superman as Superman is. Not just using his abilities to help people when it's convenient, but actively dedicating himself to it as much as possible. As he'll say later, to serve Earth and be a good man. At first, I was a little bit worried that they might be taking away from the Kent's influence, which was one of the major issues I had in the last iteration of this character, but that doesn't seem to be the case. You can't pretend to be the type of good Clark is. And so much of that kindness comes from his upbringing around people who were nothing but kind to those around them. So whenever feels like he's being Superman just because it came down in a message with him, but because it's something he feels drawn to because of his desire to help people. Though I gotta point out that Jor-El is played by Bradley Cooper. I don't know why that shocked me so much because he is Rocket Raccoon, so like clearly he's in with the gun. But yeah, that really threw me for a loop. But because the fight that injured Superman in the first place was all orchestrated by Lex, he's got one of his other manufactured metahumans tracking where Superman goes to heal himself. So this is a Lex that's 100% been obsessing over Superman and everything he's done for the years he's been in the public eye, to the point of knowing he must have some kind of lair, and he still can't peg that it's Clark Kent. Again, we can't fault him for that. They got the hypno glasses. Really, the most egregious oversights in Lex's schemes is that he is fine with his arm candy girlfriend just taking selfies all around what is essentially his criminal war command center. Will arrogance be his downfall? Usually. When I say obsessed, I mean obsessed. When Superman gets back to the fight, Lex is just calling out an entire playbook of attacks, analyzing every move that Clark makes so they know exactly how to counter it and do the most damage to him before the hammer just leaves without finishing him off because they figured out where the fortress is. I do think that Superman needs to be a little bit more concerned about this mystery metahuman that can hand his ass to him, but he's mostly just excited that he got the front page story at the Daily Planet with the exclusive interview with himself, which is where the movie does something I really liked. Clark offers to let Lois, who he's been dating for a few months now, interview him properly. Another moment highlighted in the trailers that both brings up the realities of an individual who has the ability to singularly stop wars, the issues that presents globally, and his unwavering dedication to save and protect people from injustices worldwide.
People were going to die!
Hard to argue with that desire, but because he lives in America, it's hard for people and detractors not to present that as an American asset, creating conflict with a political ally to protect a country that's largely been hostile in the past. Fictional countries in the movie, but so much real-world parallel. Varavia specifically saying that they're trying to save and liberate the people of Jarhanpur from tyranny, which is actually just an excuse to steal land. And even without the American aspect, the world is going to be concerned about one dude who can literally do whatever he wants and answers to no one, especially if he might start accidentally kicking off global tensions. It is important to note that while Lois is really pushing him in a lot of this stuff, she doesn't disagree with anything he's saying or his justifications, but it is her job to ask the questions and he just can't handle it. He's not a politician, he's just someone with the ability to do something and doesn't even question if he should if it means saving lives. I think by the end of the movie they could have gone harder on that side of things, but they end up using it to focus on something slightly different and actually round it out in a nice way that I'll get to. But this moves into Lex distracting Superman with a massive monster of the week so he can break into the Fortress of Solitude because apparently he's acquired Superman's DNA. Which is when we get Green Lantern and his Justice gang of Hawkgirl and Mr. Terrific. It's Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, so he's just this arrogant showboat trying to make just as much of an image for himself and the team as he's trying to maintain his Lantern Corps oath of protecting the galaxy. Towing the line of hero and celebrity. A great scene to see Superman's kindness, saving everything and everyone he can, trying to get the monster away from the situation and people instead of instantly trying to kill it, making sure people are okay before he continues on to the fight, doing everything he can to stop damage that the Justice Gang is unintentionally going to create. Also, where we get the fantastic shot of him saving the little girl, it's so good. That is really what sold me on this movie. I know it's so simple, but seeing that in the trailer, I was instantly like, yes. So simple, so perfect, that's Superman. But again, all the ruse to get into the Fortress of Solitude where the engineer manages to both find that recording of his parents and uncorrupts the second half of the message, which actually concludes with the statement that humans are simple and it's his duty to rule over them and essentially create a harem to reestablish their species. So basically what the Viltrumite were tasked with doing in Invincible, minus their planet being destroyed part, they were just doing it for love of the conquering game. So this, as expected, completely crushes Clark's self-identity. Again, not that he feels like he has to do the right thing and save people because his parents told him to, and without that, it's like, fuck all of it then. But because he is genuinely that good, and he was proud to come from a group of people that he believed were good in those same ways. That he was carrying on this great legacy of his people that couldn't anymore. So finding out that isn't the case is pretty devastating. Add in the fact that all those people in the world that he cares about so much are starting to turn on him, believing that this must have been some ploy to get trust. I saw a lot of people wondering if Lex actually doctored the recording, but I thought it was pretty clear from how the engineer obtained it that it was real, and they also make sure to clarify that on multiple different occasions. Everyone from literally Mr. Terrific to the US intelligence agencies are saying that it's legit. Sure, it's something that they could probably retcon on down the line if they want, but for the purpose of this movie, it's legitimate. Even Lex says he couldn't have hoped for material that good as leverage against Superman. Now, it's also revealed here that Lex has been working with the president of Baravia to invade Jarhanpur and take it over so they can split it. Lex pulling a little bit from the Dr. Doom playbook. But his ultimate goal is still absolutely to find a way to kill Superman. He is, after all, a classic supervillain who is the perfect counter to the hero. Superman will always be a central focus the same way that Batman is always the Joker's central focus, just in different ways for different reasons. Now, once Clark realizes that Lex must have gotten into the fortress, he returns to see that all of his lovely robot friends, who definitely have feelings even when they say they don't, have been massacred and that Krypto's missing. And this is the one time in the movie that you'll really see Clark lose it. Smashes into Luthor's office demanding the dog, which certainly doesn't make him look any better to the public. Like, wow, Earth's strongest hero when he's throwing a fit over a dog?
The dog, Luthor! You took the dog!
That's right, you get all of this.
Where's the dog?
But hey, I'll take the freak out of where's the dog over where's the trigger any day of the week. Also leads to a pretty funny scene with a shitty pundit interviewing Peacemaker about the whole thing, which I appreciated. I had such a fun time with season 1. I can't wait for season 2. Though honestly, if the plan was to conquer the planet, you think Superman would just drop pretenses, cut his losses at this point, kill Luthor and anyone who had a chance at stopping him to start his reign? But sure, maybe he's just trying to keep up appearances. And even though it's established that Krypto is not really his dog, not even a good dog, more of a foster situation, he says, he's still gonna do anything in his power to track him down. He literally turns himself over to the DOJ because he's now a wanted criminal, in hopes that they end up taking him wherever Lex has Krypto stored because he's alone and probably scared. It's so sweet. And I really love the scene with Lois here. She points out that while she's cynical and questions everyone, he always sees the best in them, even when they give him reason not to, and he really does see that as his strength, and it is. And I just really love that the end point of this conversation is that, like, seeing people as beautiful and kindness is the most punk rock thing you can do, which is actually pretty subversive at this point. Giving a shit is pretty cool, actually.
Maybe that's the real punk rock.
That is so punk rock.
I did see some people take issue with this scene because he tells Lois that he loves her and probably should have told her that a long time ago when they've only been dating for a few months. But guys, it is possible to love people in situations where you might not be with them yet. A major aspect of a lot of Superman stories is Clark being into Lois before they officially get together. And as someone who's ultimately always trying to do good and save people, he obviously values someone who seeks truth above all else, even in the risk of her own safety. So he does end up getting brought to where Luthor has Krypto, but I gotta say, before they get there, for whatever reason, all of the people on this abandoned military base are wearing a variety of different floral shirts. Y'all gotta stop stealing my style for your villains. Not sure why, it's fun, makes for an easy cosplay. But yeah, where Luthor has Krypto is apparently a pocket dimension. He's ripped a hole in the fabric of space and time between different worlds, and he just hides things there. He's literally just imprisoning everyone from political enemies to ex-girlfriends. The perfect place for Clark Kent, especially once they have Metamorpho around to recreate kryptonite in exchange for his child's safety, so things are looking pretty bad for Superman. They literally use Clark being a literal alien to justify violating the rights that he should have because they're saying they don't apply to him, which is very relevant. Again, just this great mix of stuff that can only exist in a comic book and really grounded real-life things. This is also where Luthor shows that he has a slew of trained monkeys to make fake hate threads on the internet about Superman, which is essentially what happens in real life, except for us. It's just a combination of foreign interference and bots. Yeah, sure, a lot of them are real idiots, but so many of the real idiots are spurned on by the fake accounts. And very few of our parents are immune to the outrage machine. But on top of contributing to breaking Geneva conventions for disappearing Superman into hidden custody, Lex is leveraging anyone he's ever seen Superman interact with against him. That food cart owner that helped him at the beginning of the movie, Molly? Lex starts playing Russian roulette with him to get answers out of Superman, or at least to try to get him to admit things that aren't true to save this guy. And yeah, he actually gets shot, and Lex doesn't give a remote shit. He's just like, oh man, I thought we'd get more than one round deep on this. No value for humanity, no value for life, but Superman's the one he sees as inhuman. The funny touch here, even though it's really not a funny situation, is that he's like, guess I'll have to just keep working my way through anyone you've ever spoken to. Honestly, I'm pretty sure if you could find that little girl he saved, she'd be on the chopping block too. But then he's like, maybe that journalist you're always talking to. And at first I was like, oh no, not Lois. Forgetting that he clearly means Clark Kent, the guy who's always interviewing him because he doesn't realize they're the same person. So fun. Well, not the murder part, obviously. That sucked. I was kind of surprised they went there. But the murder's actually enough to make Metamorpho wonder if what he's doing is the right thing, if Lex would even hold up his side of the deal of not killing his son. So he actually ends up helping Superman escape so he can save his son, and the two start trying to make their way out of this hellscape. But before this, when everything seemed really hopeless for him, how was anyone going to figure out that Superman is stuck in a pocket dimension? Enter Jimmy Olsen, loverboy extraordinaire. He texts someone named Mutant Toes, and instantly I was like, oh my god, what metahuman is that? Whose nickname is that? But no, it's Lex's girlfriend Eve, who's actually just been pining for Jimmy after they had a little brief dating stint, and I guess she just has weird toes. And that really corroborated my statement that Lex should have been a little bit more concerned about his arm candy taking pictures in all of his private locations. Now, just knowing that he's in a pocket dimension doesn't really do Lois or anyone else any good. So of course she heads over to the Justice Gang for help, and they all turn her down except for Mr. Terrific, who thankfully knows where Superman would have gone off the map because he just casually has nano trackers in all of his friends' blood. Well, actually he says everyone's blood, and I'm just assuming that's people that he knows, but maybe it could be everyone. Fun scene though, Guy knows that Superman is Clark Kent and is really not good at playing stealth on that and the hypno glasses.
So you know he's Clark Kent.
Why does he trust everyone?
But yeah, off they go to that military compound, and the one thing I will always give James Gunn is he really knows how to find a way to make every hero shine. And usually in a very fun way. So like when they get to this military base, the way Mr. Terrific is just laying people out, it is so fun, it's so dynamic. Find me someone who can juggle the tone of a fun, silly song with people being tossed around in fear as well as James Gunn can. Maybe that's not your style, but I'm someone who really needs fight scenes to be dynamic or fun in some way to keep me engaged, and this is doing it for me. So they do make it into that pocket dimension, which Terrific is horrified by because he knows that the slightest miscalculation in creating something like this or trying to maintain something like this could instantly destroy Earth or open up some kind of dimensional rift through the planets. So they don't actually have to do much once they get there, because once Supes escapes, he saves Krypto, narrowly avoids being sucked into a black hole, all while trying to keep that little baby safe. I'm glad that the baby doesn't follow the rules of our babies, otherwise its neck would have snapped like 20 times. But they all make it to where Terrific and Lois are hanging out and make it out of the portal just in time as it collapses. We get the lovely, oh my god, you came to find me out of Clark, before they realize that he is pretty strongly suffering from kryptonite poisoning, which means they gotta bring him to the Kents to heal up. And while I remember Pa Kent from the movie Identity, it is pretty interesting that they went with kind of mostly lesser known actors for these characters. I think that was a really good choice compared to what we've seen so often. I don't know, it just fits the vibe of like these small town farmers very well. But because Clark is just so shook about the second half of that message and what it might mean for him as a person and who he's been, it really gives Pa Kent that moment to shine, to reaffirm that parents can't set out the blueprint for what their kids are gonna be. They're just supposed to give them the tools to figure it out on their own. That the message that Clark wanted to take from that recording means more than what its intention ever was. His actions are what makes him who he is, and who he is someone that Pa Kent is proud of. And man, I love that. We love a proud Pa Kent. God, it's great to have a good Jonathan Kent again. But family time can't last forever because things are heating up. Losing Superman obviously enrages Lex to degrees you cannot imagine, and he just starts to take it out on everyone around him, including Eve, who in her petty rage sends Jimmy a bunch of information to take Lex down, but it's just a bunch of her selfies. But thankfully Lois realizes, as I mentioned, that in the background of all these selfies is a bunch of confidential information and all the evidence of things that Luthor's been scheming. This does get Eve thrown in that pocket dimension, but hey, that's okay, the gang has leverage. They'll get her out. But Lex obviously isn't going down without a fight here. He's got a couple things to try to lure Clark back out. He's given Bravia the okay to kick off the war, but then purposely opens a rift from his portal so Superman will have no choice but to focus on that because it'll consume the Earth if left unchecked. And man, even though he has to deal with this world-ending thing, which usually I hate, there's still just these great moments of Clark just saving people, making sure people are getting out of the city before figuring out how to stop things on a grander level, which involves getting a code from Luthor, because there's always going to be a code. Now, we do love that while the city is evacuating and everybody at the Daily Planet is panicking and running, Perry and their team are just kind of like running through all the things Luthor's been doing casually as if nothing's going on. So all the information they had found about how Lex was selling off arms for nothing to Bravia and now has Luthoria here that he wants to be the king of and whatever else he's planning, they're just going to focus on making sure that story gets out to the people. They've just got to hope that Superman's going to do his job and save the world, and they're going to make sure that the person responsible for all this goes down. Obviously, Lex isn't just going to let them like rock up to his place right now though, so he's sent sends his metahumans off to deal with Terrific and Superman. It's a pretty cool scene. Terrific gets knocked out a little bit early, but the engineer goes in with all these nanites to suffocate Superman from the inside, which obviously doesn't work. He's too cool for that. She ends up dying in that scuffle, but Ultraman, the Black Noir looking motherfucker, is actually a Superman clone. That's why he could counter him so effectively. He's just a stronger version of him with no autonomy. But honestly, I did find he kind of looked like Anakin in episode 3. But yeah, Lex obviously reveals now that his plan wasn't to kill Superman so he wouldn't be around to stop the conflict in Bravia from happening. He created the conflict so he'd be able to kill Superman. Again, the main focus, the main obsession is always going to be Superman for Lex Luthor. Openly admitting that it all comes down to envy. That at least when he's mentioned in the same sentences as someone like Einstein, those people at least did something even if he does think he's so much better than them. Superman just showed up and started existing and people treat him like a god. Something that Lex absolutely wants and just sees Superman as this figure to prove how weak they are as a species. So to him, taking out Superman is the only way to actually preserve humanity because he doesn't see Superman as a man. So how can someone who's not a man be the shining representation of humanity? And I really do like that they just put it all out on the table like that. Like, it would be so easy for him to just be like, I'm not envious. I can't believe you'd say that. It's like, no, yeah, I'm envious as shit, but still, fuck you. Now, obviously, Superman comes out ahead on the clone, just bops him into the rift, takes out all Lex's other super soldiers before heading to Lex himself, where he now gets to defend his humanity, that he has all the same feelings as everyone else on Earth, and every day he wakes up not knowing what to do, but he's just going to continue trying to be better and make that world a better place. He may not technically be human, but his humanity is his greatest strength, and that even after all of this, hopes that one day Lex will learn to do the same. Honestly, really strong moment here before Krypto starts thrashing Lex around. It feels very much out of the Avengers playbook with the Loki scene. So Lex has now failed in every conceivable way. We'll get to the Bravia situation in a second, but everything's failed for him. He just got thrashed around by a dog. And the last blow is about to come from the Daily Planet, exposing all of his lies, his plans, his crimes, that he was the one actually interfering with foreign entities. Everyone just seeing him as this lying loser. The ultimate embarrassment for this man who just values the thoughts of others so intensely and wants them to see him like a god. We also get a nice little hint at this universe's Max Lord. Sorry, Pedro, none of that was your fault, but I'm sure you understand why they had to switch directions a little bit.
Max Lord, I need you to give me the stone.
So as I kind of teased earlier, the Bravia thing did not go well. So back when it was about to pop off and Superman couldn't show up, the kids were actually like hoisting up this homemade Superman flag, just calling for him to come back. He is their savior. And I did see people arguing about this online because it's not Superman that shows up to save them. It's Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Metamorpho. And yeah, it would have been cool as hell if Superman had just showed up at the last second to save the day and shut down all these tanks and deal with their shitty president. But them showing up is an example of what makes Superman so great as a character. He inspires people around him to be better. Guy wanted nothing to do with any of this for fear of what the repercussions for himself might be. Like, there's this whole joke about how he reinterprets the Oath of the Lantern Corps in whatever way works best for him. But seeing that war about to start, knowing that Superman wasn't going to be able to be there to stop things, he actually felt compelled to do something, same as Hawkgirl. I think it's more important to show how one person standing up for what they believe is right can make the people around them stronger and better too, than it is just to have that one person be the god he technically can be. A major point of this movie is that Superman's strength is not actually his greatest strength. It's who he is as a person outside that. But yeah, it's a really fun scene. You got Guy Gardner whipping people around with middle fingers. I never thought I'd say that a Guy Gardner Green Lantern would be our best live-action Green Lantern to date, but here we are.
Because we are also of the cloth.
Of the cloth?
Also, Hawkgirl flat out dropping the president of Bravia to his death was pretty badass. So that's the main conflict out of the way. We get a nice little shot with the government people watching this and just being like, okay, so what do we do now that the metahumans are calling the shot? So it's a real little minor setup for where we're gonna go in the franchise, I'm sure. They obviously release everyone from Lex's prison. Jimmy gets the big ol' hooju from Eve. That's from The Bachelor. It's a hug jump, I found out recently. And while he has been maintaining her insanity the entire movie, I think he's coming around on her here. Lois and Clark get to have their magical moment where she tells him she loves him, and Jimmy and Perry can tell that her and Superman are an item, still obviously not knowing that he's Clark Kent, meaning they're doing a really good job concealing that relationship at work. They also introduce Supergirl to us right at the end as this pretty immature party kid. That's who Krypto actually belongs to and why he's not trained. So I'm pretty interested to see what they end up doing with her. It's definitely a very unique take on the character in terms of what we've seen live action and otherwise. Ending us off with his robots who've repaired themselves for wanting the name Gary, and Clark having had them reprogram the memory bank to show him moments from his childhood with the Kents. And that was just a really nice heartfelt way to close out the movie. Now I will say there were a mid-credit and post-credit scene, but they don't tease anything for the future because Gunn said that that was one of his least favorite things with working with Marvel, because he felt like it would trap him into certain storylines, especially when it ended up taking so long between Guardians 2 and Guardians 3. He felt like Adam Warlock did not fit where he ended up having to take the characters. And I do appreciate that he actually cared about delivering, because it doesn't seem like Marvel's actually cared about delivering on anything they've promised in the end credit scene since I think Eternals. Like in Eternals was when the last time they did not deliver on anything in the Eternals. Yeah, one is just Clark and Krypto sitting on the moon looking at Earth. And the one at the end of the movie is just Clark asking if Terrific might have put things back together from the Rift a little bit wrong. They're a little bit off center, which obviously upsets Mr. Terrific. And Superman's just like, damn, I gotta be less of a dick with my honesty. But yeah, that's Superman, and overall, I think it really works, even with it being a pretty busy movie. I maybe would have liked him to explore the idea that Superman has the ability to just unilaterally make world-changing decisions in conflicts at the drop of a hat, but I do think that's going to be a bigger piece of things in the future based on the government guys being like, so now that they're calling the shots, what do we do? But I love that it had heart, that it had hope, and that it really drove home the idea that the thing that makes us human is more about our similarities than our differences. And just pushing that idea of kindness with aggressive dedication. Because in a world where everybody's primed to be cynical and hateful and angry, that really is the real punk rock. But let me know what you guys are thinking down below. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you a fan of the darker take of the character we had before? Are you into this return to vibrance? Do you like the vibe but not the movie itself, or vice versa? I don't know. Let me know. But that is going to do it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my other social medias are listed down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.